here tonight to introduce Victoria. And if you're here tonight, it's probably because you're already aware of the immense talent of Victoria Rushton. In her relatively short career so far, she's proven herself as a great type designer and letterer, an insightful speaker, and an important figure in the type community. She first came onto my radar at the inception of Alphabets, the global community of women in type. If you haven't already, check out alphabets.org. But we met in real life at TypeCon in Denver, just two type ladies named after English queens. And we became fast friends. I was delighted to discover that Victoria's sense of humor is a goddamn riot, and her wit and her intelligence are a necessary perspective in this world we live in today. She teaches us a lot about consciousness and intersectionality and the connotations of the nail painting emoji. And as director at large for the TDC, it's my duty to pay attention to our community and who we are and who we want to be, and to help assess our audience as a professional organization and as professionals ourselves. And it was this in mind that I asked Victoria to speak tonight as just one of many important young voices and talents in type. Victoria?
Doing the blue screen. Yeah, unplug that too. Dark in here now. Hi, hello. It's a small enough group, which is good, which means that I'm not like totally about to puke. And yeah, hi. I am so thankful to Elizabeth, and Carol and the Type Directors Club to speak to you here today. My name is Victoria, she said that. I am named after the Queen. I'm a type designer and a letterer, and I work at TypeNetwork. I make fonts for custom clients, and I make fonts for any of you to license, and I think that I wrote in my bio for this event that I make lettering for everyone, whether they want it or not. And, okay, so does anyone here really love, I can't see you, but does anyone really love keeping a sketchbook? Do that a lot? Sketchbooks, notebooks, into that? I don't. I really wanted for like my whole life, that's not even that much of an exaggeration, I drew a lot. I wanted to be the kind of person that really loves to keep a sketchbook. And you know, you leaf through it and it's really pretty and it's got all the notes and the shopping lists and it's all chaotic and unplanned but still really beautiful, that kind of thing. But when I sit down to actually do that, I hate that. I hate doing it. I don't have the motivation to do that, and I'm trying to be okay with who I am. But while I don't love drawing in a sketchbook, I find endless motivation to do other kinds of little projects which don't see the light of day and the light of internet, which I didn't really realize that I had a sizable collection of. And so that's what I'm going to be showing you tonight. This is my own version of a sketchbook. This is where I put my trials and ideas and where I practice drawing, and it's somewhere where I'm motivated to learn and to grow without the pressure of anyone having to look at it until now. Except instead of a sketchbook, it's a bunch of font files. So I'm going to tell you all about why hijacking other people's stuff works for me. And I had to come up with a title for this like way before I had written it. So that's what I had, but I had another idea that I came up with was that. Great for next time. So I came to type design. Oh, now I can see you because of the light coming off of that slide. So I came to type design via lettering, and these are my two very own type designs that you can license from the internet if you so choose. And you saw Embry on the title slide. That's all I have to say about that. And so getting trained by professional type designers did wonders for my critical lettering eye, you can imagine. But I was never taught any specific guidelines for lettering the way that I learned type design from the senior designer that, oh crap, there was a GIF there. Is it gonna go? Yeah, it does. The way that I learned type design from superiors at my company. I always thought of getting good at lettering and getting good at recognizing what was well or poorly executed lettering. That was really something that I did on my own time, that I taught myself. Obviously a really big overlap between that and type design, but still. Yeah, I thought I'd throw up some things that like show you how good I am at my job for anyone that hasn't seen them before. Like originally I wasn't going to put any of my real work in here, and then the feedback that I got from that was, well, that's brave. So yeah, let's just let this cycle through. All right, here we go. Now we can start. So it all started when I had an assignment in an illustration class at art school. And as I remember it, the assignment was to take a complicated illustration and make it more minimal. So I've always loved John Mayer, right? I shared this presentation with my mentor and senior designer Cyrus the other day, and he was like, I have no idea who John Mayer is. And I was like, what? Does anyone not know who John, he wanted me to play a song, and I was like, no. Yeah. So anyway, this John Mayer album had just come out, and I really liked it, but I really did not like the album art for it, which, by the way, is by sign painter David A. Smith. And I'm so sorry, David, for what I did. So don't take a picture. He's already super not going to hire me to design his album cover, so like no need to make it worse. So I made something worse in completely different ways, but in making that thing, it forced me to see what was actually working about the original, which was a lot, and look at what was masterful about it. And just, even though it was really masterful, it was just not my taste. And what I thought was not my taste was the gratuitous ornamentation, the random shit like the clock and coins with dudes' faces on them, and garish swirly things everywhere. But in the length of the time it took me to draw my thing, I was staring at the original and I realized that it reminded me of something that I really liked, which are the Sanborn Maps title pages. So the Sanborn Maps was a publisher of maps of American cities starting in the 1800s, and they were originally used for assessing properties' insurance liabilities, and also provide us with a historical record of city planning and sociology. And they have these baller-ass title pages. Like if you go and do a search for Sanborn Maps, it's mostly the title pages, a couple maps. So good job, nerds. And these things have a lot of garish, elaborate, swirly details. So I think that the main thing that didn't fit my personal taste about the Born and Raised album cover was just the colors chosen. So I had been wrong to attempt to fix that. But it had occurred to me that if I didn't like something, I could make my own version. And now I had a taste for blood. So I paint you a little word picture of my first job out of college. So I graduated with my degree in illustration, right? And which I was too stubborn to change. And I was really sure that I wanted to be a graphic designer, like capital G, capital D. And all that I knew about graphic design was what I had learned in 1.5 classes and what I had taught myself. And I was like, okay, well, where can I go that there's a non-zero chance that someone's gonna hire me? And the answer to that is newyork.craigslist.com, which is how I found this dude named James, who does packaging and branding and things like that from this little windowless office in Soho. There was actually a window, but it was like facing a courtyard, and we didn't get a lot of light because we were in the bottom floor. There was a Chihuahua named Ricky, so I didn't exactly work alone. And we hand gold leafed some leopard print on some magnums of rosé, and that was the time that happened. So one of James's clients was Lipstick Queen, which was great because the Lipstick Queen herself, her name is Poppy, is amazing, and she would come by a lot. And because James would let me keep some of the product samples that he would keep in the studio, which meant I got to find out what not drugstore lipstick was like, which continues to ruin my life. So here's the logo, like you can see on all the products, and the type that we would use for product names below it, like you can see here, the Hello Sailor, it's a blue lipstick. And so here's the story about the logo. My boss had drawn it by hand on paper at some point, and then someone, I don't know who, had gone and digitized it. And it wasn't a font, it was just that collection of letters. And when we had a new product to design a package for, I would be the one that would drag the letters in the correct order, like you do, great. And when I spend some time manually arranging letters like that, which could just be a font, in my spare time, I'm like, hey, why don't I just make a font? And then I'm also like, hey, what if I just smooth everything a little bit, for fun? But I'm not gonna show this to them. The client loved and totally still loves the logo. And so it's just icky to show my boss hey, here's how I might fix your thing. This was just an exercise for me to find out about sets of letters. At the time, I was still working on my first typeface and I was doing lettering on my own. And there were things that I was learning and there were things that bugged me about this alphabet. Mostly the way that the V and the W have these curves that are bam, out of nowhere. But I just wanted to figure out what made this particular one tick or not, and that was my way of doing that. So let's move on. Here are donuts. My extended family lives in Texas, and I grew up eating these donuts. We moved around a lot, but we would always come back to visit, and I grew up eating these donuts on trips to visit them. And the logo was pretty endearing to me, especially the script, but there's actually two logos, so it says Shipley Donuts, it's really donuts. A few summers ago when I went to visit, I was, a real professional type designer, and I have my real professional type designer eyes on. And what I saw about this script was something that looks like it maybe got run through an auto trace ringer a couple of times. It looks to me like maybe someone digitized it poorly. And maybe at some point the LEY got nudged a little too close to the P, I don't know. And so I was like, what would it look like without that? I wasn't trying to make my own version of the logo. I was just imagining what if someone had come to me hey, all of our computers caught fire and now all we have is this piece of paper with this wonky low-res version of our logo, can you help us? And I'm like, hell yeah. And just trying to see what the wonky low-res file wanted me to do, how to make the best possible version of what was there. My favorite time to work is when there's an extrinsically formed goal for a project. Goals are hard to come up with, and make this thing a little better somehow is a pretty simple and easy and satisfying goal. So I sat down at the dining room table with my laptop and straight up digitized what I saw, because I feel like I can't see anything clearly until it's in black and white vectors. And so now I have this and I can start to see what's happening with it. And I can start to make a better version of what it would be, and that's what that is. So the first thing to go was whatever is happening with that ink in the S. It was, I don't know, it looks like maybe that was just a mistake there, or maybe it was a little residual from a calligraphic kick-in at the beginning of the S, but I decided to smooth it out.
It's an angry snake.
It's an angry snake. And I could see what was happening with the ascender and the ascenders and the E-loops, trying to make those match each other a little bit better, what the average of those things and the best version of them wanted to be. And just generally try to even out where the thins are supposed to be and where the thicks are supposed to be. In the original, it was often thick where it was supposed to be thin, so just trying to get that into a more consistent structure. But when I squinted them, they look pretty much the same. And so that was the goal. The goal was trying to, if someone who was used to seeing the old logo was driving on the highway past a Shipley's, or someone who was used to seeing the old logo picked up a box and the logo was this big on the box, they wouldn't notice the difference between the old one and the new one. Just, I would. It's really hard for me, maybe you guys understand this, it's really hard for me to letter purely self-generated content because writing is hard. And if you don't think that writing is hard, I'm not sure how to trust you. When I sit down to write a handful of words to letter, it's really hard to come up with those words because whatever you can say in only a few words is probably going to be pretty trite. And another reason it's hard to come up with my own things is I like to make things that have jobs. That's just anything that's useful. That's one of the main things that appeals to me about making work. And so in my free time when I'm hey, let's draw something for fun, Like, that's not fun. It has to have a job before it's really fun. So fixing someone else's work gets the whole coming up with words thing out of the way, and it gets the whole coming up with a job for the work that you came up with thing out of the way. And then, yay, now we're working. So now I've shown you getting my feet wet with my theoretical exercises. Let's go and butt into real people's lives. So a good friend of mine is named Alex. He's an illustrator who lives in Denver. Like, that's an old picture, but I think it still works. A couple years ago, he started to draw and write and lay out some make-believe magazine covers just for fun. And as I recall, he hadn't worked very much with type before at all, and he just wanted to see what he could learn by doing things and entertain himself. Like me, we're friends. So I saw these images on Facebook, and I was like, hi, remember when I told you about losttype.com? Yeah, I remember too. So we had some good chats about point sizes and readability because he's awesome and always open to suggestion. And then I was like, oh yeah, and also I drew you a custom masthead just so that you have something unique to use. Okay, bye. So like the real trick to foisting this on people, I think, is not asking someone if you can change their logo, but just doing it and then being chill, like, hey, my dude, I made you this. You can use it or not. It's fine. Screenshots of your own tweets are you paid to be here. So here's what I did. My main justification for redrawing this was that I thought that the thins could be thinner in this context. I thought that he picked a good structure of something really condensed, just that it looked clunky so big. So I thinned it out and smoothed it a little bit while keeping those dimensions. That's all. Looking at it now, the S is a little heavy, but whatever, that's cool. And I made a stencil version. I don't remember why. And thanks, Alex, for your help. An acquaintance that I went to college with was making a webcomic called Hot Blood. It is about gay centaurs in the American West in the 1800s.
Yeah.
It was released online over a period of like about 3 years, and you can still read it there or buy it in book form because it did really well on Kickstarter because it's beautiful. And it has its own TV Tropes page. Is that like any indication of popularity? Once the artist tweeted that they had to kern the font manually in Photoshop with every comic page, which popped out to me in my feed like, you know, dog whistle. And I was like, hello, remember me? I can help, I can kern that. So I cracked open the font, and it turns out what they had done was use myscriptfont.com, which is one of those free auto make a font out of your handwriting things. So what it did was auto trace the alphabet and then set all of the side bearings to exactly 10 units. So nothing was spaced well and everything was just very close together in general. Do I have a GIF here? So before I could think about spacing it, about kerning it, I had to actually space it. And for a couple of the characters, I altered the drawing a little bit. Like you can see that I had to bring the C's underbite in a notch, just so that it have more even space on either side of it. And I don't remember doing this, but this isn't a GIF, I have to like manually click this. When I found this file, I was cracking up because apparently I also lovingly went in and lightened some of the characters that I thought were too heavy. Like here you can see the N and the A and the M. Like, I don't remember doing that, but of course I did that. Why wouldn't I? And so then I went through and made a big pass at kerning it. Beep. Dance.
Yeah.
Like, yay, this is looking like a vast improvement. Auto trace letters that are spaced correctly are so much better than auto trace letters that aren't. But I thought to myself, like, okay, one more thing. And I went and made some ligatures of common double letters in English just to make it look a little bit more like real handwriting, because of course. So here's what it looks like in the comic before and after. Yeah. You can totally tell a little bit. I did this all in just a few hours, and you know, it's far from groundbreaking. It's another handwriting font, and these images are the files that are online. Like, so there's only this is the teeny difference that most people that see it are ever going to see. But I can only assume that it made this artist's life just a little bit easier to not have to hand space the letters in every comic strip, and it only took a few hours of my time. Like, a good typeface shouldn't be hard to use. Like, that's the first thing it has to be, is easy to use. Main big bullet point. So I fixed that. And I don't think that they particularly cared about the ligatures, but I cared. Once upon another time, I lived in Boston, and I took the subway to work, and I would get off at South Station. That's where I would get off for the Font Bureau offices, and I would take the subway home. I call the subway the T, which is cute. And at one point, they always have a different ad campaign in South Station where, you know, it's like the big banners for the iPad or the Android iPad. At one point there was a really big ad campaign for Emirates Airlines, and that was up for a few months. And so I don't have any photos of the ad campaign, but the ads look something like this. I do have a picture of a subway car wrapped with Emirates ads on the inside and the outside. I took this one picture. There's this one with the big flight attendant faces, and this one of all red on the inside, kind of scary. And I got these two pictures from a blog called Miles on the MBTA. Just remember that for later. So here was the typeface used, so I was seeing this a lot, so I had a lot of time to think about it. And there were a couple of things that really bugged me about it, and just one of the things that really stood out to me were the teardrop shapes in the counters of the A and the E. These, you know, those shapes. I had to blow that up a lot. They look like that, and they come to a point like that, you know, like teardrops, and they are very weird for that reason. Like, normally you'd expect the shapes to be more like that, like weird, okay, weird, okay, which seems subtle, but like, bear with me, it's kind of not. The A's and the E's, they show up a lot. It adds up to a lot. And also the A has this really pretty serious underbite situation going on. And the other thing that unsettled me was the kick-outs at the end of the stems. So having those slanted out strokes, like you can see all along the baseline, it felt like everyone was slipping at the same time on a banana peel, or like everyone was falling over like dominoes. I assume that those things were done to make the Latin feel more at home with the Arabic counterpart for different marketplaces not pictured here. But these things are really unconventional for a Roman alphabet, and they made me uncomfortable. So it just so happens, folks, that my parents live in Dubai, and I went on a trip via Emirates Airlines to visit them. Like, we didn't take that airline specifically for that. It just happened. And let me tell you about Emirates Airlines. It's really awesome. It was everything the ads promised to me it could be. They give you paper menus. They have good movies on the personal little TVs, which is wasted on me because I like to watch Ratatouille back to back. And the ceilings of the planes have the sort of like lights that change colors, so it's like you're in the sunset, but you're also in a nightclub, but you're really on a plane. And so on the way home from the holidays, this one January a few years ago, we were on a 12-hour flight from Dubai to Boston, and the in-flight magazine and little menu and the entertainment interface, they were all looking at me. And so I picked up that in-flight magazine, which I still have, and I started redrawing this typeface. And this is how many letters I drew before I fell asleep. Folks, I think this is pretty good for a few hours. And I just wanted to see if taking out some of those things that I didn't like would make it feel more stable and grounded to me. And it did. The first thing to go were those teardrop shapes we talked about. And the teardrop shapes in the counters and the A's underbite. Like, getting rid of those things when they have been glaring at me. I've been glaring at them for so long. It really felt good, like therapy on a plane. And then the other main thing was rearranging the calligraphic ins and out strokes from the verticals. So, squint at this with me. In the original, what most often happened was a vertical that started straight, going straight down, and then at the end had a slanted out stroke to the right. So like everything that you see in the X height right there, it starts straight and then it goes up to the right. And sometimes it would start with a slanted in stroke like in the ascenders where you see the B and the H and then, well, at the top is the D and the B. Start slanted and then go down straight and then end with nothing. And those slanted strokes all across the baseline were just what made it feel wobbly, and plus it seemed to break its own rules as I examined it, by sometimes starting with a straight and sometimes starting with a slant. I wasn't sure what the pattern there was. And so my new system that I decided on was always starting with a slanted in stroke, going into the stem, and ending straight on the baseline for anything that was on the left side of the character, and ending with a slanted outstroke for anything on the righter side of the character. So like you can see the right side of the M has a slant, and the stem of the D ends with a slant because it's on the right side, yeah. And that felt more natural to Latin writing to me, and it just felt more grounded to me, like before they looked like they may sail away. I would be really curious to talk to an Arabic type designer about what they think of the relationship between the Arabic and the Latin alphabets. If the real typeface, the relationship between the Arabic typeface and the real typeface, and or with mine. Like, it's not like I consulted one over the Atlantic, but like, to be fair, I didn't even ask if there were any on board. Didn't ask around. Fixing things, it's what's fun about designing type in general, right? You have to design type, you have to like to fix stuff, because as I'm sure a lot of you know, the first time that you draw a letter, it's going to be okay or bad. And then you do that for the whole thing, and then you slowly just keep fixing everything all at the same time, keep building them up together until you get to a point where it's good. But it's really hard to go out on that limb and make the first thing that's iffy or bad. Like, when doing that first step is when I feel bad at things and bad at my job and bad at my future prospects, and I like to be good at things. So I gravitate towards things that I see outside, and I'm like, oh, that can be the first step, and I latch on to that and cheat and skip the first step and get straight to the fixing things and feeling good about myself, because that's what we're really here for. And in addition to liking being good at things, I really like to be right, and I really like when there is a right answer. Isn't that great? I think I could have been really good at math if I were ever good at math, you know what I mean? My favorite assignments in school and in work have been when there was a definite better and worse way of executing something. Like when we had assignments on perspective and dimensions that couldn't be fudged, and I was all over trying to figure that kind of thing out. And that's one of the things that I really like about type design, is that feeling when you figure something out and it's as right as you think it can possibly be in that particular situation. Being right. So let's get back on the T. Almost every one of the Boston T stops has these screens where they tell you when your next train is arriving, which I'm sure New Yorkers find cute. I wish that I knew where this design came from. I assume that some engineer drew it and now it's just stuck in the hardware forever. Maybe not, maybe you can change it, I don't know. But waiting for the T every day, I would stare blankly at these. Study the restraints of the design. So, it's a monospace typeface, right? And every letter is confined to a 10 by 16 unit box, which, you know what, is a lot of space. You have a lot of room to draw in 10 by 16 units. It's not like, say, the stock photo of a ticker that I found that the characters are 7 by 8 units. That's not a lot of space to work with. It's super not like the train sign in Penn Station, may it rest in peace, with its grid system that is fucking bananas. Like, have you seen this thing? You've seen this thing. I mocked it up just because I wanted to see how it would work, and like, there is no room for more invention in this grid. Like, anything that those letters and numbers are is pretty much the only thing that they can be in this system, which is this way for some reason that I would love to know. Unlike the T signs. Like, look, that's so much room for invention. You can do anything in there. Why are they like that specifically? And so here are my grievances about them. I wasn't into the lowercase, there's totally not an M on that slide, I'll show you later. I wasn't that into how the terminals differed from one another when you see in like the A and the E, they're doing one thing where they end facing, shooting straight out, and the G and the S are doing another thing where they end by curling up a little bit. I thought that there wasn't very much finesse in the way that the shoulders of the H and the N looked. I thought that the capital letters were unnecessarily high-waisted, and in this context, the high-waistedness made them look kind of unfriendly to me. And actually, like, looking at this for a while, the longer I looked at it, the more unfriendly everything about it looked. And I had a lot of time to look at these signs. Like in the winter, when you'd come in, it would be like 38 minutes till the next train. So I tried to make it look cuter, and I tried to make it use the space better. Let's look at everything all at once, shall we? I drew it all. So the round characters looked like someone had taken a more normal, more humanist thing and tried to wrangle it into this coarse grid, and the result is, I think, clunky. And it doesn't have to be this way. Like, it could be something more square that doesn't fight the medium. Like, fight the medium, look at me getting all arts go with you. So you can make the characters more square, and that's more natural to a grid. It just fits. And then the same kind of thing has to happen with the shoulders of the H and the N, which had always bothered me. Square them up. And the R gets to be its own self, not just an N with its leg awkwardly chopped off. The I and the J get their little serifs, like you would see in a monospace sans design, so they're not all sad and lonely with big cavernous spaces on either side of them. They just flow better in a line. And the same idea with giving the T a taily, T for taily. I brought the waists down and a lot of the caps where I could, which I think makes them look friendlier. And also those had to get more square, less round, which I think also makes them look friendlier. Maybe that's just me. The M doesn't look so angry anymore. The M's an important one because it's, it says 10 minutes, 15 minutes. There's always like the minute thing there, and so you see the M a lot, and the M would always I don't know, I found it intimidating. The 2 needed Jesus. We got that. But not the L. The L was just perfect. So.
Without sin.
Yeah, without sin. I have a little story for you about this. When I was Googling pictures for the Emirates wrapped subway car from earlier, which was really important, I was like, I want to know what that looks like. The only place that I could find that online, it's like no one takes pictures of random subway campaigns for no reason, it was on this one dude's blog. It is called Miles on the MBTA. So there's this guy named Miles. He loves the MBTA. That's the Massachusetts Bay Transit Authority. So he writes this blog where he rides and reviews each of the subway, train, and bus stops in the Boston metro area. Just in case you didn't get that, he reviews all of the different T-stops in the same metro system. And he's been writing it since 2013, about an average of 15 blog posts a month. So there are like 700 entries lovingly discussing the finer points of anything that you could ever hope to know. And I was like, this is amazing. I wonder what he thinks of my redesign. And so I started poring over the blog for a minute, and I was like, and I learned in the glossary page, well, I learned a lot, but one of the things was they're to be referred to as countdown clocks. And I searched for and went through all of the entries that mentioned countdown clocks. But he never comments on the design of them at all, just whether or not there is one in a particular train station. It's good, by the way, if there is one. So obviously I went and messaged him on Facebook, and I hesitated for a minute, like, is he gonna be like, who spends their time redesigning the signage? And then I was like, his hobby is riding the subway, so it felt like a safe space. And he was really lovely and really appreciated seeing it, obviously, because it was about the subway. In particular, he really liked the new R's and T's that I drew. He said that he had never noticed how the R's in the countdown clocks do that thing where they just slope down like that and then end. And now that I had pointed it out to him and he had noticed it, it was going to bother him. So my work here is done. I didn't specifically set out to give you a tour of my typographic injuries in several different cities, but that's just the way that I live, and that's how it turned out. I'm bringing you where I live now. I live in Baltimore, the greatest city in America. It says that on all of the bus stop benches, and I am not one to argue with benches. There's this sign on my walk to the grocery store that I really liked, and so I took a picture of it. And I thought it was charming, but I couldn't really put my finger on why. And I was also on the lookout in general for anything that might inspire an original sans serif design, because I really gotta make one of those of my own one of these days. If anyone has ideas? So later I took that picture and I slapped it in the Robo font like I do, and traced the letters faithfully, you know the drill now. And I was kind of horrified. So this thing that I thought that I liked, everything was just all over the place width and relationship wise. Like when it was in black and white, I could see that the P and the R were so much wider than the B and the D. Why is that happening? And the D was especially really narrow, and the A was just wider than anything I'd seen in my life. And so I started trying to fix it, but I didn't spend very long on that. What I must have liked about the design when it was up in chrome on a wall with the dramatic shadows, well, maybe it was the dramatic shadows, but it could have been how messed up it was. Like, that could have been what made it charming in its way to me. Like, it wasn't correct, but it was charming. And then as I started to tone it down and strip away those bad things, it started to just be another condensed sans serif in the world. And that's not my thing, moving right along. If anyone else wants it, it's yours. So taking a little step back and looking at all of this work forces me to be self-aware about how useful or not useful my skills are. Like, am I doing this because I can actually help the situation, or am I unnecessary here and this is just a self-aggrandizing exercise? Maybe a little bit of both. And the projects where I feel still a little bit icky about a redesign are the ones where a redesign would not be necessary or welcome, and the existing design was doing its job just fine, thank you very much. I still learn things from that, but you know, the ones that I feel less bad about myself for doing were the ones where I could present someone that I knew with a product that could make their lives just a little bit easier, a little bit better, somehow, however small that way may be. This was a placeholder image, but I couldn't find anything better, so enjoy. I draw letters for a living, which means I've got all of these opinions about letters, about what they can and what they should look like. And I find myself surrounded by letters all the time. You know the feeling. On subways and airplanes and my Facebook feed of what my friends are doing. Like, that's one of the thrilling things about drawing letters for a living, is that I can see them everywhere. So you get to feel so relevant all the time. But like, what do you do when you're always within eyeshot of something that you have an opinion about? Like, what do you do when you really hate practicing sketchbooks and you really like to letter, but writing words is really hard? That's me. And if something gets under my skin enough, because things get under my skin all the time, but enough, I'll want to take that thing and usually secretly use it as a starting point to try to figure out how it works or doesn't work, and at least occupy myself, but usually I teach myself something that happens. So let's just talk for just a sec, about what redesigns can't do and end on a damning note, why not? So, as you know, it's a real privilege to straddle the line between what I do because someone pays me money to do it and what I do because it brings me any sense of accomplishment or fulfillment or excitement at all. And occupying that space might make it really easy to leap to a conclusion of like, oh, redesigning a logo solved this one problem. Like maybe I bet a redesigned logo can help solve a totally different Hydra monster autocracy problem. Maybe. And it's like, yo, hey, way out of our depth. I love my job. And I think that part of loving my job is being honest with myself about when my professional skill set alone is not going to be anywhere near adequate to fix threats to democracy and human rights, and when I should not kid myself and posture to be trying to be helping the situation by redrawing anything, let alone logos. So hey, if you talk about fixing things, I'm talking about fixing things. I'm trying very hard to fix things like that in different ways. And if you want to know what those are, you probably know, but Google it. For the most part, it's a bunch of undesign-related things that are tedious and unglamorous and unportfolioable, and everyone doing them is how we might eventually fix things, so that's my plan for now. And thank you so much for having me. If you had fun, you can pay even more attention to me at these places and the after parties at Craig's house.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So how much of this do you think then applies to work that you do for profit?
Probably only what I mentally take away from it. It's just somewhere to practice. It's not like I'm going to take it to Emirates and be like, hey, I'll sell you this. And it's not like I'm going to take it to anyone's logo and be like, what if I change this for you? That feels bad.
Yeah. Do you feel like a lot of do you feel like a lot of this is kind of feeding into like how you're developing your own taste and like your personal?
Oh yeah, well I mean, like I started with the really bad thing because I didn't know what I was doing and was just trying to figure out what my taste was, and so yeah, I guess it's just trying to, every time you see something out in the world where you're like, I don't like that, you have to, or at least I try to think about, like, do I not like it because I think it's not, like, technically good in some way, or just not my taste, whatever that means? Like, what does my taste even mean? Yes is the answer to your question. Questions are so hard.